your final, you can refer to all of my demo videos. That tiny URL again is tinyurl.com/gdemo18. That's /gdemo18. And if you find that takes you to all the playlists. If you go to 3D animation, all these playlists here, you'll find everything you need. Okay, including this final review right now. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a helix guy, and we're gonna extrude some. We're actually gonna combine some, and then we're gonna color, and then we're gonna make him bounce, and then we're gonna play with the graph editor, and then we're gonna play blast. Some of you still have struggles with play blast, and we're gonna do this all in 20 minutes. So let's go fast. If you have questions, I might have time to ask for a question, but if you're dealing with I might not have time. I'm gonna plow through this and record it. So make sure you're doing every simple step, but it's, I don't have a lot of time to review. All right, you got your Maya open? Okay, first thing I'm gonna do is save. Command-Shift-S. I'm gonna call it Spring Dude. Spring Dude. And a lot of you already have your Helix up. Fantastic. You're gonna go to Create, Polygon, Helix. Now you can do anything you want. You could do this without a Helix. You could do this with a where's Helix? There it is. You could do this with a cube. You can do this with a cylinder. You can do this with a cone. But I'm just gonna do Helix. There's our Helix. I'm gonna pull them up for a second and give them a look. All right, let's review some modeling. So remember, with modeling, there's two ways I showed you, the simple way and the complex way. The complex way, you select faces and extrude. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to face, and I'm going to select 4 faces on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to hit extrude, Command-E. Remember, you have the global versus local switch, right? Very important. This little tiny switch here really changes the way everything kind of is. So I'm going to extrude out. I'm just going to make like a stupid, simple little arm here. I'm going to kind of make a little arm coming out. I'm going to extrude again. Go global. You do not have to follow me precisely. Don't forget you can click the wheel and rotate. So I'm just going to extrude one more time. Something like that. Did you miss what I did? I'm going to do it on the other side. So remember, I'm grabbing 4. You can grab 2 faces. You can grab 1 face. Extrude, Command-E, global. Now, I'm not going over all the details like how to do a magnetic snap and how to flatten things. Remember, a simple trick, if I want to flatten this, I can grab this red box here, and that really helps me flatten out my thing real quick. I'm going to extrude again. Just making little arms. Let's see. Get down there. Go. I'm going to hit the wheel. Move, scale, rotate, all that fun stuff. One more extrusion, Command-E. There you go. Okay. If I wanted to have smaller extrusions, remember, you have the insert edge loop and the multi-cut tool. So if I wanted to kind of give them a thumb and some fingers, I'd probably want to chop this up a little bit more. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools. By the way, Extrude is under Edit Mesh. If you can't remember that, it's Command-E. Extrude is under Edit Mesh. If you can't remember this, Command-E. And I'm going to go here to Mesh Tools. I'm going to do Insert Edge Loop. I'm going to make an edge loop here and an edge loop here. Why? Because I wanted smaller faces. Don't forget, once you're using edge loop, to quit out of it. Now, sometimes, class, this happens in the final. You forget that you're still in edge loop, and you're like, Mr. G, I can't select the face. Mr. G, it's doing all sorts of weird stuff. And I'm going to tell you, you're forgetting to click on something. That's all I'm going to say. You're forgetting to click on something. And you have to be like, ah. So if you're ever having troubles, a lot of the time, it's just that you got to be on your selection tool. You got to be on your arrow. I'm going to click my arrow, and I'm just going to give him kind of like some fingers and some thumbs. So I'm just going to be like, I'll grab these two faces, and I'm going to extrude out, Command E. Whee. Now, this is not by far anything amazing. We're just kind of reviewing. I'll do the other side, Command E. My tiny little, that's like his thumb. And then remember, if I wanted to give him fingers, I'm going to select these two faces and extrude separately. And then these two faces, extruding separately. Now, we're doing this because we have 20 minutes. Your final, you can probably give a little bit more detail. Okay. Look, it's Springman. So just extrude out some arms. I'm springy. Okay, let's color him. If you don't get all the fingers, don't worry about it. If you have some extrusions, great. Any questions on extruding? Typically go with faces. In the event of the final and something's really messed up with your mesh, it might be easier to just start over than to troubleshoot the problem. Let me say that again. In a final setting, when you're like high stakes, 2 hours to do the whole assignment, it might be easier to start over. I just swore I'm recording. Right? Or rather than trying to try and stitch everything together with the multi-cut and everything else. Okay, let's color. Stop extruding. So when you want to color and you want to have multiple colors, the first thing you want to do is you want to have a base color. So I'm going to make my base of Springman here. I'm going to make the base color a blue. I'm going to right click, assign favorite material. I'm going to make him Fong. I'm going to make him like a plastic spring. I'm going to hit color. I'm going to hit blue. Maybe a little lighter blue. Isn't that pretty? Now, because he's Helix, I chose this. If I wanted to be like, if I wanted to give him like black pants, if I shift and double click the next one, notice it selects an entire ring. If I wanted to make him look spirally, I can, remember, shift, double click, and now he's purple and blue. Shift, so if I hit face and I click on one face, hold the shift key, double click the one right next to it, remember it selects that ring. So if you're in a sphere, it selects one ring of that sphere. If you're a helix, it selects this whole thing. I don't want to do that though. I just wanted to remind you there's that trick. Shift and double click the face right next to it. Let's go back to full blue. The other thing I wanted to show you was, let's say I wanted to make this bottom portion black. So he's wearing a blue shirt, he has a blue face, and he has black pants. So if you double click on your arrow, remember you have camera-based selection versus non-camera-based selection. So I'm going to uncheck camera-based selection and select it all. Oops, I accidentally got part of his arm. Let me try it again. There you go. Maybe I have to do a little extra selecting right here. That looks like I missed some. So you just kind of select them. So I just wanted to remind you there's camera-based selection and non-camera-based selection. And I can add a separate color, and I can give them black pants. All right. Now, if you're in a pinch, you can do, I do want to see some extrusions. But you can also combine objects. So you can go back to the old school method where we took, so if I wanted to give them eyeballs, I can go to Create, Polygon Primitive, Sphere. Right? So I could give them an eyeball or two. And what I want to do is I want to color this before I combine it. So remember to color an eyeball, same thing. Pick the base color, assign Lambert. I'm going to give him a white. And then I'm going to grab these faces down the middle. Turn on my camera-based selection. Just select these in the middle. Then select the next ring, shift, double click the one right next to it. Maybe do one more. Give him some googly eyes. Lambert. Black. Now that I got the color I want, I can shrink this down. Don't spend any time making this good. Just kind of make it. It's just meant to review. We got 10 minutes left, and I got to start keyframing. And then remember, Command D duplicates. And sometimes I get called over during a final, Mr. G, it's not duplicating. It is. Remember when you hit Command D, it puts it right on top of the other one. If you don't make the spheres, and you don't make the extrusions, and you don't make anything else, that's fine. The last step for this is if you have separate shapes, you have to select them all, and you have to go here to Mesh Combine. Mesh Combine. Mesh, after selecting everything, Mesh Combine. Okay, if all you got is a helix, stop coloring, stop extruding. We need to review the graph editor. So whatever point you're at, stop. The graph editor is important. So it's okay. Most of you know how to color. Most of you know how to mesh combine. Most of you know how to extrude. So stop trying to make it look good. Just have a helix or whatever you've got in object mode. Okay. We're going to have them bounce off the ground, and if time, bounce his head off a wall right here. So real quick, I'm just going to go to Create. I'm going to make a cube. I'm going to flatten that cube. Just kind of have some ground, right? And then when I'm happy with that, I can duplicate that cube, Command D, and I can rotate it like so. Okay. If you don't have the ground or the cube here, that's fine too. Just want to make some reference points. Okay. Timeline time. So we haven't done keyframing in a while. Remember, the hotkey is S for set keyframe. The hotkey is S for set keyframe. So here's how we do it. And again, stop extruding, stop doing anything. Get your helix in object mode. Get your helix in object mode. Find the start point. So find a place how you want it to start. Something like this. Right? And press S. That's frame 1. Now typically for us, a bounce is from sky to ground. It's typically a half second. But if he's falling a really far distance, it might be a full second. Remember, it's 24 frames a second. Keep that as a reference. So now I've kind of positioned him up in the sky and over to the left, and I press S. Right? Mesh combine. Okay. Move him over to the left and press S. I really want to make sure we touch the graph editor before we do anything else. Then I'm going to go to frame number 12. And again, everyone's going to have a slightly different length of speed. So it might be 24, it might be whatever. So frame 12, I'm going to move him as if he's falling. Give him a little rotate. Move him right into the ground. Press S. That's frame 12. So 1, he's up in the air. 12, he's in the ground. And then 24-ish, I'm going to rotate him so his head's banging off the wall right here. So I'm going to move him up. I'm going to move him over. I'm going to rotate him. Something like that. Press S. If I wanted to do one more bounce, somewhere around 32 or 36, I can do one last bounce, but we probably aren't going to have time for that. So if you got 3 keyframes, that's it. The point is, remember, you have to move them and position them how you want, then press S. That's the key part, S. Okay, here's what you need review on. So right now he looks like this. And I'm going to shorten this down to be like 36 frames. Okay? Doesn't look natural. So we're going to help that by going to the graph editor. How to get to the graph editor? The graph editor is a window. Just remember it's another window. So go to Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. That's probably going to be the hardest part. I think you'll remember everything else. You'll just not remember how to find Graph Editor. So it's Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. You've clicked on it. And now, the only one we're really concerned with is Translate Y for right now. You always start with Translate Y. Always start with Translate Y. If I wanted to resize it, I press A. You don't have to, but it kind of helps. A for all. Okay. And remember, we want the valley to look like a spike or an upside down spike. All right, so we got to break it, and that's the other button that a lot of people forget, and there's no way to kind of, the trick is it looks like how we want it to wind up, right? That button looks like how we want the end result of our Y graph to be. Yeah. It's Maya Preferences. I'll show you tomorrow. Maya Preferences Animation. I'm going to break it, and now I'm going to select the key. Remember, drag to select the keyframe, then drag to select the handle, and then you middle mouse click to move. It's not moving, Mr. G. Mr. G, it's not moving. What's wrong? W. W for move. Remember, move, scale, rotate. You have to do the same thing here. So now I'm going to move it. So the graph editor gets broken. So hang up number 1. People forget where the graph editor is. Hang up number 2. People forget the break the tangent button. Hang up number 3, people forget that they have to hit the move tool. I'm going to grab this one too and move that up here like that. Okay. Now, some of you are going to need to hit, if you're bouncing off of a wall, which some of you did, some of you didn't, you're going to need to reflect that in your Translate Z or X. So he bounces off of a wall right here. So I want to get rid of that middle keyframe. And remember, so it's not always only going to be a Translate Z. Sometimes you're going to need to do a spike or half of a spike on Translate X or Z, depending on the direction you're going. Okay, I got 2 minutes. Let's see. Break hand. All right. It's already looking way better. Look how he hits that ground there. What's missing? What's missing? Squash and stretch. So remember, stretch, the fastest stretch reflects speed, squash reflects impact. So right before he hits, I'm going to stretch him out. R, I'm going to give him a little bit more of a stretch. Press S, and then frame number 12, give him a little bit more of a squish. And notice when I squish him, he comes off the ground here. So I got to pull him back down, press S, go back to 13, give him a little bit more of a stretch. Press S. It'll be fun to do it on the wall too, to kind of exaggerate it even. So at frame 21, I'm going to press S and keep them the same. Frame 24, kind of squish him in, and I'm going to have to move him closer too. And then bring him back to normal. Something like that. There you go. So now he looks like this. Now he looks like a spring. Okay, last thing. I know, very quick review. Bell's gonna ring. Play blast. Remember, you have to play blast. Right click on the play button. Don't forget options. Don't forget that save to file is checked off. And don't forget to hit browse, desktop, and everything starts with a 4. You're gonna call it 4_final. Tomorrow you're gonna call it final. All right, when you play blast it out, you turn it into the submit folder. Thank you very much. Don't